I don't even know how to start this because no matter what I say, it feels like I'm gonna be hated. But I know that's just the tape of the narcissistic abuse playing in my head. So a lot of us are struggling right now, needless to say. The systems around us are collapsing. The stuff we're supposed to rely on isn't reliable anymore. And I just realized something that is helping me that I wanted to share in case it helps you too. I'm also going through eating disorder recovery right now, and I just had a bit of a relapse. It was unconscious and unintentional, and my body just revolted. It seemed like I was getting fatter again. Like at the beginning of the eating disorder recovery, I gained so much weight so fast, but you have to do that. Your body is doing that because it doesn't trust that you're going to keep feeding it, so it holds on to all this extra fat. But then after a while, it starts to naturally come off. And then it started happening. But then when I had this relapse, my body revolted again, and it started retaining all of this water, and I was freaking out. And I didn't understand it at first. I forgot that edema, water retention, is something that a lot of people go through in eating disorder recovery. That just hadn't happened to me at the beginning of the process, but it happened a couple weeks ago. So much of that is about the internal experience of healing from an eating disorder too, like accepting all of this. So I'm trying to accept it. I'm trying to do a better job of accepting it. Anyway, the story I wanted to share today is about my experience being the kid in a narcissistic family structure, the scapegoat kid. And my experience of that has come up in layers. It was like first having a therapist tell me that that was going on when I was in my late 20s, that I was the scapegoat kid in this narcissistic family structure. And then I started learning as much as I could about it. And I quickly saw that my family was like a textbook case. Fast forward to now, and I'm 41 years old, and I've done so much healing work, and I've done a lot of Vipassana meditation. And it's just so interesting to see the way that like these deeper layers still manifest at certain times, right? And also the way that like external events can force you to heal, you know, the next layer, which I think is kind of what life is for the people that are really trying to do the work to heal. So for me, the most recent triggering event had to do with like getting robbed just over a year ago. I had this like long journey to financial security. And that's the reason Seeds exists, to help other people with this, because the system, the old money system, is not designed to help most of us thrive. It's designed to keep most of us in like a fear and scarcity paradigm. A lot of us work because we're afraid and because we're in scarcity, not because we love the work that we're doing. And I think it's perhaps the biggest waste of human potential that exists. And Seeds is working to address that problem too. So I got into this place where I was financially secure, and then I got robbed. I had what was for me a huge amount of money stolen. Insurance barely did anything, and they were actually assholes to me when I even filed a claim. The cops were useless, and I even took it to the FBI, and the FBI head of department or whatever that I spoke to, I actually recorded what he said. You can listen to it in the other video I made if you want to watch that. I didn't record this part though. He essentially told me that I was too poor. I didn't have enough money stolen to merit their time. So fuck them. So I had no choice, it seemed like, but to go to my narcissistic family to ask for help, because by the way, they're also kind of fucking rich. My narcissistic dad died in 2021. Apparently he refused the COVID vaccine, and then he died of COVID. He was otherwise healthy. So my mom is now in control of like all of their assets, all of his parents' assets, because he was an only child. And then also her parents passed away. So whatever she inherited too. My mom ignored the first email she'd received about like me needing help. And I followed up with her. And she sent, to her credit, some money. I sent her this email that was just like, thank you for this, but this is a tiny fraction of what my siblings have received just because they're alive, you know, like just because they exist. And I only need this because I am in crisis because this man did something bad to me. And then all the systems that are supposed to help you in that situation failed as well. She never responded to that email. Maybe a month later, I get this email from her lawyer. The lawyer says he wants to buy my share in a piece of property that my name was on with my 3 siblings. So I was fortunate to have that. Our parents just put our names on this piece of land in like the early 90s when we were kids. I assume there must have been a reason that had to do with like tax something that I don't know, but I think there was probably goodwill in it as well. Like they were trying to do it to be nice. I didn't even know about this until like my late 30s or something, that this piece of land existed that my name was on, and they make an offer. And she of course knows that I'm in financial dire straits. I'm doing everything I can think of to try and, bring more money in, and it just, nothing was working anymore. That's the other thing. I've tried to be very conscientious over the years about having like multiple revenue streams from different sources. It's like everything just stopped working all at once, which was interesting too. And I think it relates to my larger message here. Like, I think all of this was happening to teach me this larger lesson that I'm going to share, which had to do with being forced to ask them for help. I mean, asking for help is hard for so many people anyway, and I have a bit of that in me. But specifically asking for help from my family, especially my mom, it just takes me back to like needing her in different ways and reaching out time and time again, and just either being shunned or abandoned or even attacked. So it's like returning to this original wound, but I didn't have any choice but to try to do it. Plus they're fucking rich. So like, if you're rich, what is the point of any of that if you're not helping out somebody you supposedly love when something like that happens to them? So the lawyer made this offer, and he said it was based on this appraisal that they had done. They knew I couldn't afford to get an independent appraisal, but I looked into it more, and I found out that the person they presented as an appraiser wasn't actually an appraiser at all. He was a real estate agent, a new real estate agent, and he was also my little brother's brother-in-law, his wife's sister's husband. And I managed to figure this out, and I asked this real estate agent about his relationship to my brother. It was really shady and weird. The design of this economic system puts us in this situation in which if you're really in need of money, somebody who isn't in need of money can take advantage of that, right? That's basically the grounds for like all corporate jobs, right? That's like how Jeff Bezos is really rich. Not because people want to work in Amazon sweatshop factories. It's because people need food and we need to live inside of buildings to be like warm and safe. So I agreed to sell this property, my share in this property, and I got the funds for that, and I was grateful. Maybe there was some goodwill in it. I want to believe that anyway. Fast forward to the last couple weeks, 8 months later or something. I felt compelled one day to look at the public records for the county that this land is in, which is like where my family has lived for generations. Both my brothers and my mom still live in that county today. And I'm looking at the public records, and I see that the land that I sold, the share of land that I sold, it's not only in my mom's name, but there's also a larger share in my brother and sister's names. And I thought that was weird. Like, why would they? What would be the incentive to do that? So I emailed my brother and sister each, like individually. It was like a whatever, like polite professional email or something. And to be fair to them, I got no contact with the family. The last communication I'd had with my brother had been after he like threatened me to not talk about our dad's habitual infidelity. He like threatened me and told me I was going to be in his wedding and I wasn't going to talk about this. And he did it over text message. And I remember the therapist / coach that I was working with at that time, I told her about it, but then I ended up reading her the text. Because the other thing about narcissistic abuse is like, it makes you like not know what is real, to know like how much of something is your fault, how much is your responsibility. And so I read her this text, and I remember she said that it was even worse than I described it as being. And after that, I told him that I wasn't going to be in his wedding. And that was like the beginning of going no contact. And I did like a formal thing where I like told several relatives that I was going no contact and why, and that meant I wouldn't be at like family events, including like funerals and weddings and stuff. That was the last interaction I had with my brother. So I get it. If you haven't had an interaction for years, I mean, I would hope that he was aware of how abusive and whatever he was in that message. But then the next communication he's getting from me is about like a real estate transaction. That's the thing too, like the way they view you when you're the scapegoat kid, I feel like their perspective of me, it's been prioritized in front of my own perspective. So it's like, it's kind of interesting because I haven't been in that energy for a long time. It's kind of interesting to see the way I just like kind of fall back into thinking about myself and the way I perceive them to perceive me. So I'm like already thinking like, oh, look, Rachel's such an asshole. Look, she's just trying to fucking ask about money. Like, I haven't heard from her in years. You know, like that's the tape that's playing in my head. But his response suggested that what I sensed was there. He said, to whom it may concern. So he didn't even address me by name. And he said, as a non-owner of this property, I have no obligation to divulge this information to you. I hope you have the day you deserve. And my sister's response was 2 lines, and it said, please respect my boundaries and do not contact me again. I owe you nothing. She'd never previously stated a boundary about not contacting her, so I wasn't aware that I was violating any boundary. Anyway, those responses felt kind of so overtly hateful to me that I definitely spent a while sobbing about it. And it also felt like jarring. And it also felt like, oh, not only was I right in sensing that they hated me, like they hate me even more than I realized that they did. And then that touches again on this desire to give them the benefit of the doubt and take more of the brunt of the, like carry more of the burden, whatever, that the scapegoat kid feels, right? That gets put on you if you're the scapegoat. But because my sister specifically said, I owe you nothing, I thought that sounded weird. And it started to make me wonder if like, yeah, there was something associated with this land that I didn't know about. And because she said, I owe you nothing, I ended up diving more deeply into the public records. And that's when I found a lease for mineral rights associated with that property, a 5-year lease. So that means it really looks like what happened. Unfortunately, I fucking hate to say this, but it looks like they took advantage of the fact that I really needed money. And then my sister and brother got this bigger share of this land that is paying out for some natural resource that it has. Hopefully it's being done in like an ethical, sustainable way. If there were like regular payouts, I didn't receive those over the years, even though I was an owner of this land. I dug through the public records in even more depth. I saw that my little brother now owns like $700,000 in real estate in that county alone. I don't know that he could have gotten that money from anywhere except from my parents. He also worked for my dad for years. It's like the only career he had out of college. He'd never worked for anyone other than my dad. And it was like I got turned into this detective, right? And then I also found that my other brother, the golden child, in the public records, I'd seen that he had sold 14 acres worth of land that was just given to him, not to any other sibling. He sold it like 6 months after our dad died. And I saw on his public Instagram, first of all, that it looks like he's still living with my mom. And there's a picture of him with a BMW. There's a picture of him with like a new motorcycle. And pictures, multiple pictures where he's wearing our dad's Rolex and like his gold rings. And I was with our dad when he bought that Rolex. I was like 17 or 18 years old. And I remember it struck me because the cost of the Rolex was almost identical to the cost of a semester of college for me. And later when I outed our dad for cheating on our mom a lot, he refused to pay for a semester of college. And it just seemed striking, you know, that he was wearing that value on his wrist instead. I looked it up and Rolexes can appreciate like up to 15% per year. So that Rolex could be worth like over $100,000 now. So it's just like the differences are so much more stark. Like my brother hasn't had a job for many years, as I understand, my golden child brother, and he's receiving all of this other stuff. And while I was appreciative of the gift that my mom, you know, did send me in a crisis after I was robbed, it just pales in comparison to like the stuff that my golden child brother got just because. And I should also note that this was after he was drunk driving, like blackout drunk driving when he was like 24, and he hit a family. He's so lucky he didn't kill anybody. I think he knocked out the mom's teeth on one side and he broke a kid's wrist. There were like 3 little kids in the car, as I understand. And we're from a small ass area. So like I knew the brother-in-law of their family pretty well. And so then he had a lot of court mandated things that he had to do. And he didn't seem like he learned the lesson from it. The lesson that was his fault. And the family structure really tried to get around like assigning appropriate fault for something like that. What I'm finding that is helpful to recognize now is this idea that the obstacles are the path. The obstacles are the path. if all of this wouldn't have happened, you know, like if I wouldn't have gotten robbed, if I wouldn't have been born into a family where there was like blatant misogyny in the first place, which made me wake up to that within family structures. And that happens across races, across religions. And I don't see a lot of people talking about that. So it's something I think I'm supposed to talk about. I've seen misogyny baked into the economic system. Women who found organizations like Seeds, like the one I founded, get 1% of VC, venture capital. And then we see these like bullshit AI companies that have these ridiculous valuations. Like, it's just so out of hand right now that more and more of us are waking up to like how it's all nonsense. This whole system just doesn't work anymore and never really did work that well, except for like a small handful of people. It reminds me of something from one of the episodes of The Crown, the one about Princess Margaret, where she's hanging out with that guy who's gay and he becomes a priest. He says something about how like the monarchy only protects the center, and the energy of monarchy, that patriarchal, unearned hierarchical structure, it's what the structure of the world still is. That structure is imbued with this unhealthy masculine energy that is about taking, it's about colonialism. It ranks races. White supremacy lives within that structure, denigrates feminine energy in everyone of every gender, especially female people. It assigns them less value. It assigns us less value. It means that the care professions, that creativity, that the arts receive less funding, and that system devalues those things. But if you know, I hadn't had these experiences that were difficult for me and stuff, I wouldn't have founded Seeds, which is working to address these problems from the ground up by design. And if I wouldn't have gotten robbed last year, I wouldn't have been forced to go to my rich family to ask for help. And I wouldn't have thought to look at these public records to see these like even more blatant numerical factual proof that my siblings have been treated very differently than me. There's the story in the Buddhist text about how before the Buddha incarnated as Gautama, he got to choose who his parents were going to be. He got to choose his human parents for that life. So presumably, you know, like he selected parents that would help him with that mission, that goal to become a Buddha in that lifetime. I think if we have a lot of negative karma, we don't have a lot of choice about the in-between lives. We have to go work off that negative karma. But I suspect, because this feels right for me, I suspect that a lot of us have been able to choose a lot about our lives at this time. In no small part because this is such an eventful and special time to be alive as a human on Earth. We're going through ascension. Astrologers have been talking about this for a long time. The Buddhist texts talk about how the gong of Vipassana has been struck. In this period we're in right now, Vipassana is supposed to spread as well. And a lot of us came in for this. And I think a lot of us chose, you know, circumstances, including parents and family members, to help us with our mission. So I believe I chose this family, and I still love them very much. But the obstacles that have been presented in relation to this, which have had so much to do with my own understanding of my own value, and also my value as a woman and the value of women generally within this system, and even my own personal astrology, because like my Chiron is at the 29th degree of Taurus, which I think is interesting. I guess it's like the most intense degree, right? The aneretic degree. And Chiron is the wounded healer. So it's like the wounding that you are meant to heal yourself so you can help others heal, which is totally what Seeds is about. If you're struggling with food insecurity right now, Seeds is raising funds to help those who are at risk of hunger. You can ask for help through Seeds. You can also give to help people who are at risk of hunger right now. I'll put the link in the description and I'll put it in a pinned comment. In the moments where it seems hardest, if you're able to step back for a second and look at it with more equanimity and see the bigger picture regarding how those obstacles are the path to a more transcendent place for you, a more healed place, I'm finding that that's really helpful. This idea that the obstacles are the path is really helping me, and I hope it helps you too.